Sarah Silverman says Louis C.K. masturbated in front of her with her consent, but take a wild guess whether or not getting consent repeatedly, like Louis did, spares him the label of predator. Okay, this is a Variety article. I scanned it the other day. I actually archived it in case it changed, and lo and behold, it did. I'm gonna read from the original version that I archived, and then we'll get to the updated version because there is an important. I guess that's one way of putting it. There's an interesting update in that newer version of this article. Anyway, let's get to it here. Sarah Silverman said comedian Louis C.K. used to masturbate in front of her with her permission during an interview on Howard Stern's SiriusXM radio show on Monday. I don't know if I'm going to regret saying this, Silverman said. I've known Louis. I'm going to call him Louis, whatever. Don't pay attention to how I pronounce his name. It doesn't matter. I've known Louis forever. I'm not making excuses for him, so please don't take this that way. We are peers. We are equals. Okay. Let that be burned into your memory because I think that statement is pretty important and I think it's going to have bearing here. And she's not the only one. She's not the only female comedian who says this about Louis C.K. When we were kids and he asked if he could masturbate in front of me. Okay. Wait, hold on a second here. When we were kids, does she mean kids literally? Like, 11, 12, 13? Or is she old enough now to think that when she was 18 or 19? So Louis C.K. and Sarah Silverman knew one another when they were kids? I had no idea. Who knew? Anyway, first thing I want to point out here is even as a kid, Louis C.K. was asking for permission to masturbate in front of these women. Now, I don't know what the hell Louis C.K. gets out of this. To me, it seems pretty pointless, but whatever. It seems to be his thing. So well before we had Me Too, we had Yes Means Yes, we had No Means No, decades before feminists tried to burn this all into our minds, Louis C.K. was essentially ahead of the curve. He was doing what the feminists wanted him to do, right? He was asking for permission. He was asking for consent. I mean, you really can't get more feminist imprinting than asking for consent, right? And he'd ask if he could masturbate in front of me. Sometimes I'd go, fuck yeah, I want to see that. Okay, so for whatever reason, I guess Sarah Silverman is into this too. Whatever she got out of it. But okay, I guess that's what Louis C.K. gets. I guess it's the thrill of, having some woman wanting to look at your wink and wanting to watch you wank. I guess, it just seems pointless to me, but whatever. It's not analogous to the other women that are talking about what he did to them. What? How is it not analogous? It's perfectly fucking analogous. The only thing that wouldn't make it analogous is the fact that you were a kid and, all the women in comedy who have come out screaming with their hair on fire that he asked them the same thing he asked you as a kid, they're all adults. That's the only part that's not analogous. He could offer me nothing. Okay, well, he offered you the opportunity to watch him wank, and apparently you were really into it. We were only just friends, so sometimes, yeah, I wanted to see it. It was amazing. It was amazing. Sometimes I would say fucking no gross, and we got pizza. Silverman used, this is the author of this article, editorializing here, filling in what he thinks Silverman intends to say. Silverman used the story as part of her explanation for why she believes C.K. didn't understand the implications of his actions, pointing to his sudden fame and his inability to grapple with the newfound power that came with it. So yeah, the author is spot on here. He's picking up what Silverman is implying. Let me read her actual quote from the show here before I further expound on that. I'm not saying what he did was okay. I'm just saying at a certain point when he became influential, not even famous. Okay, so we're talking about the Louis C.K., I guess, before, he's the full-blown Louis C.K. that we all got to know through his TV show. But influential in the world of comedy, it changes. What changes? What the fuck changes? What, did he become the fucking Pope, Sarah? It's really fucking amazing. Whenever women pick up a career. Suddenly, all the heterosexual men in that field have to stop being sexual beings. They all have to stop finding the opposite sex attractive. They all have to stop hitting on them. They have to crush their libido and become eunuchs. And these women wonder why these same men begin to avoid them like the fucking plague after a while. Okay, let me continue reading this. She said, echoing past statements in which she addressed the scandal. He felt like he was the same person, but the dynamic was different and it was not okay. Yeah, like the author said, Sarah Silverman is suggesting here that Louis C.K. has this newfound power. He's a comedian. He's this influential comedian. Now, again, I'm going to remind you, she says, we are peers, we are equals. So Sarah Silverman must have this influence, must have this power, right? Because they're peers and equals. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, Sarah Silverman has tweeted many times in the past. I'll tell you what, instead of me paraphrasing, let's go right to her tweets, one of her tweets here. You can Frankenstein stuff I say if you want, but you do know I'm a comedian, right? They're jokes. I mean, comedy is subjective. I'm clearly not your cup of tea, but why do you care about me? Am I a threat in some way? Because that's silly. There's some real shite going on out there, friend. Okay, so she's talking to Joe Walsh, this right-wing commentator. And yeah, I guess he's all ticked off because she's joking about Christianity or whatever. It's irrelevant. The important part here is that Sarah's opinion of comedians is that they're harmless. There's real stuff out there you should be worrying about instead. That's how it works for her. But for male comedians like Louis C.K., when they start getting a little success, suddenly they're so important that they can no longer ask for consent with adult women. And she's made this point a number of times. Let's look at another one here. Some very odd people are saying I'm a pedo regarding a joke from time not that long ago when hard, absurd jokes about comedians were acknowledged for what they were, jokes. Not a disingenuous national threat to people fake clutching their pearls whilst ranting the country's too PC. Okay, so there you go. She can make pedo jokes, she can do all this. But Louis C.K., for whatever reason, when he becomes slightly influential as a comedian who's harmless and doesn't matter, according to Sarah Silverman, suddenly he has to stop asking adult women for consent for odd things he's into sexually. And here's another one. It scrambles my brain that people clutch their motherfucking pearls because a comedian used a crude word while speaking truth to power, but no one says shit about the swift and down low chipping away of a woman's right to joke. Okay, she's just carrying on and on. She's blabbering. Here's another one right below it. Oh, good grief, 80% of it. She was so ticked off that Joe Walsh was trying to give import to her words that, she had to retweet him twice here. Here's another instance where she retweeted the same tweet from him. Oh, good grief, 80% of my friends and lovers are Christian. I'm a comedian, boo. Yeah, there you go. So again, she's trying to downplay the importance of comedians. Except, of course, if it's Louis C.K., suddenly it's the end of the fucking world. The guy asked adult women if he could wank in front of them. I mean, it's so ridiculous. There's no sense in reading the rest of that article. Let's get into the updated version of it. The updated part here, actually, this is funny. This is an updated version because the the updated version of it that I saw had the actual tweet from the female comedian who's trying to take Sarah Silverman to task here, and I see it's been removed. It's a woman named Rebecca Cory. Okay, so I'll tell you what. Rather than let's forget the updated version of the article here. Let's go right to her tweet here, and I archived it. Because I thought they might, this is why you archive things, people, because I thought Variety might further update their article and the tweet wouldn't be in it. And there you go. It wasn't. It isn't. So this is Rebecca Cory. Now, should I read this first? Or let me read this first, and then I'll talk about who she is for people who don't know. To be real clear, CK had, quote, nothing to offer me, unquote, as I too was his equal. There we go again. She's his peer, she's his equal, just like Sarah Silverman. As I too was his equal on the set the day he decided to sexually harass me. Okay, so now before I read any more of this, I just want to talk about sexual harassment. For sane people, sexual harassment is a superior demanding sexual favors from a subordinate. And here's the key thing. I mean, some people think that doing that alone is sexual harassment, but a lot of people think it's not sexual harassment until there's an impact to the subordinate's job or career. In other words, the superior is now using his or her power against the subordinate who, if the subordinate doesn't comply, doesn't provide the sexual favor, now the superior is going to wield his or her power to damage this person's career. That's true sexual harassment for most sane people. Now, for Rebecca Cory, she's, let's just say she's adopted the new feminist meaning of sexual harassment. And this is if peers, and mostly male peers, equals if they do anything sexually around you, if they make any sort of advance. It doesn't even have to be a sexual advance. It doesn't have to be explicitly sexual, the advance. The new meaning of sexual harassment, thanks to feminists, is if you ask a coworker out to dinner at your job, that's sexual harassment. If you don't believe me, just call up any corporation's HR department and ask them, if that person complained and filed a sexual harassment complaint, if the HR department would ignore it. They would not ignore it. They'd entertain it. So Sarah and Rebecca, you can promise all of us, since you're freaking out over Louis C.K. asking for consent from adult women, you can promise us that you've never made sexual advances toward one of your colleagues. Because again, you're Louis C.K.'s equals and his peers, right? You've both stated this. You're both pretty clear about this. And you're also pretty clear that approaching colleagues within the industry with sexual intentions is sexual harassment. So you guys can promise us, you can promise all of us that you've never hit on colleagues, that you've never made advances towards them. And you're certainly not doing it now, right? Because none of us want to hear that right now you're trying to get involved sexually with any of your colleagues, because that is sexual harassment. Okay, so anyway, I too was his equal on the set the day he decided to sexually harass me. He took away a day I worked years for and still has no remorse. He's a predator who victimized women for decades and lied about it. Okay, so there's Rebecca Cory chiming in, and Sarah Silverman has groveled here. She's trying to kiss feminist ass here. Rebecca, I'm sorry. Ugh, this is why I don't like weighing in. Blah blah blah. You can read a response to Rebecca Cory. It doesn't matter. So Rebecca, why does Rebecca Cory chime in like this? Who is she? What does she have to do with Louis C.K.? Okay, so if you remember when all this shit started hitting the fan with Louis C.K., what initiated it was a New York Times article where all these female comedians came out and started telling their stories about Louis C.K. And pretty much all of the stories, except for Rebecca Cory's, pretty much all of the stories are Louis C.K. inviting them back to his hotel and asking them for consent if he can wank in front of them. And a lot of them said yes. A lot of them gave consent to him. Some of them said no, stormed off in a huff, whatever. But actually, it seems like most of them gave him consent. And then, of course, years later, they're all pissed off about it when he got famous and they didn't. And they tried to make a big deal out of it. Anyway, so Rebecca Cory, I never heard of her, but apparently she's famous enough to draft up this pilot, this idea for a TV show. So I guess on the day of the pilot's audition, however that works, on the big day for her pilot, on the big day that some producer somewhere, somebody in power in Hollywood's going to make the determination that she gets the TV show or not. And it, goes out there and we all get to watch it. Apparently, at some point during the day, Louis C.K., I guess he was involved in the show somehow. I don't know. But I guess he came up to her and asked her if she, the thing he does. He asked her if she wanted to watch him wank. Now, obviously, this behavior is compulsive and it's bizarre, but she's an adult woman. So apparently, she told him no, and she makes this big deal. If I remember the New York Times article right, she makes this big deal out of Louis blushing when she rejected him and whatever, but he went away. And notice once again that Louis takes no for an answer. He does what the feminists want him to do. He didn't get consent, So he just went away and stopped bothering her when she said no. And if more of you broads did this, instead of saying, fuck yeah, that's amazing, I want to watch that, which a lot of you have done, if you said no instead of saying fuck yeah and making a big deal of it later on, years later, trying to turn it into this Me Too tragedy, if you just said no, guess what? Louis C.K. would stop doing this. Problem solved. But of course, you want your cake and eat it too, don't you? You want to see him wank, and you want to act like it's the end of the world. You want to act like he victimized you. I guess it turns out that they rejected her TV show. They rejected her pilot idea. This tweet seems to me to be implying that Louis C.K. caused her to lose this pilot. Now, maybe she's come out in other places and said that outright. She's not saying it outright here. She's implying it. Rebecca, dear, the reason you didn't get the TV show has nothing to do with Louis C.K. or the fact that he asked you to watch him wank. I don't know what you're implying here. Maybe you're implying he threw you off your game so much that you couldn't do your pitch right, or because you spurned him, he worked behind the scenes to get your show rejected. None of that happened. Rebecca, Becky, dear, do you really think some Hollywood producer who thought he had the next big star on his hands in you was sitting there ready to sign the big paycheck for your TV show? But out of nowhere, a wild Louis C.K. emerged and said, no, wait, don't sign that. She wouldn't watch me wank. The guy would be like, Louis, here's $50. Go rub one out in front of a prostitute. Get out of my face. Do you really think he would give up on the next big TV show because Louis C.K. couldn't get off in front of you? You broads and this patriarchal conspiratorial nonsense you have swimming around in your head. It's fucking ridiculous. Let me explain something to female comedians like this Rebecca Cory, who I've never heard of. And you can think of this as an addendum to the point that Christopher Hitchens made to them years ago. Hitchens was right. You women are not funny. Most of you are not Roseanne Barr. And the only reason that Roseanne Barr is funny is because she's a fat, ugly train wreck. She's as close to a male comedian that a female comedian can ever come. Or at least she was back in the day. Now she's whatever. She's resting on her laurels and she's appealing to conservatives to try to get them to watch her. But that's fine. Whatever. Samantha Bee has never said anything fucking funny once in her life. And she's got a show. And the only reason she has a show is because she panders to left-wingers. That's the only reason she's on TV. They're just useful to the media powers that be. Getting back to when Roseanne was funny, she got that way because, just like Christopher Hitchens said about men, she was an ugly train wreck. Like Sam Kinison, like Bobcat Goldthwait, like Bill Hicks and Artie Lang, like all the male comedians who are actually funny, she had to be funny because no one would pay attention to her otherwise. You, Rebecca, like Sarah Silverman, are not funny because you're pretty. Well, she's prettier than you, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the thing is, you don't have to be funny to get things in life handed to you. Unlike men, you don't have to serve a purpose. You're just there. You're a woman with a vagina and you're decent looking, so the world shows up at your doorstep. And it's the same way with Sarah Silverman. Do you think it was actually funny when she dressed up as Hitler and went on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever the hell show it was she went on? It wasn't fucking funny. It was slightly humorous half a century ago when Mel Brooks and John Cleese were doing it, but it's an old tired joke. It would be like dressing up as Elvis now and thinking you're going to get the laughs it got back in the late 80s and the 90s. But the thing is, people watching that show and seeing Sarah dressed up as Hitler, they laugh because they like to look at her. They think she's pretty. And they're a bunch of fucking idiots. So they laugh and they think she's funny. She's not fucking funny. Now, in addition to not being funny, the further problem for you is that you're not as pretty as Sarah Silverman. The world doesn't like looking at you as much as they like looking at Sarah Silverman. So you don't get as many TV appearances as she does. You didn't get the show because, just like the rest of us, you're not funny enough and you're not pretty enough. That's what it comes down to. I'm sorry to break the news to you, Rebecca, but that's the fucking truth of the matter. It had nothing to do with Louis C.K. interrupting your mental mojo. And it has nothing to do with him working in the background to try to get revenge on you and have you lose your TV show. You know, you've had a lot of success, I guess, if you were able to get a pilot together and get a bunch of people behind you. So you've had a lot handed to you in life. But the second the one thing that you really want doesn't get handed to you, look at your reaction. You fall to fucking pieces. Rather than pulling your shit together, you're looking for ways to blame the world and everybody else besides yourself. Suck it up. You found out you're just like the rest of us schmucks. You're nothing special. You're not Roseanne Barr. You're not a fat, ugly train wreck who actually had to work to get funny in her life. And you're not Sarah Silverman. You're not that pretty. So just like the rest of us, you're not going to get everything fed to you. You're going to get a lot of things fed to you, but not everything. So quit with this fucking tantrum that Louis C.K. did something to you, ruined your career. It's a bunch of fucking bullshit. All of you female comedians who think that he ruined your career somehow are a bunch of fucking children. This is why you women have to go back to the kitchen. You're too fucking frail and fragile to handle even the dumbest shit the world might throw at you. Someone wanting to masturbate and asking you to watch is probably the most inconsequential, harmless, ridiculous event that could ever happen to you in life, that could ever appear on your lifetime radar screen. Men almost never do this. Men never fall apart at stupid shit like this. Look at what men fucking get up from and shake off like nothing fucking happened. Just fucking look at that, Rebecca. Look at this motherfucker. He just got run over by a bus and he got up, shook it off like nothing fucking happened and walked into the pub for his pint. I mean, if it was the most important day of my life and some man or woman came up to me and said, "Hey, Planet Evans, do you want to watch me wank?" I would have one of two reactions. I would go fuck yourself, and 5 minutes later I would forget about it. Or if it's a hot woman and I happen to have in this most important day of my life 10 minutes to spare, I would go, well, shit, maybe I do want to watch her wank. But, the stipulation would be that I get to video it so that later on she can't, me to me. She can't say that I assaulted her or sexually harassed her when she was the one initiating it. But anyway, one of those two reactions would be my reaction. Wanking is fucking meaningless when you're an adult, Rebecca. But of course you have to act like the sky is fucking falling. And the reason is you're used to society handing you things. So once that didn't happen, you flipped the fuck out and looked for a bullshit reason to blame your failure on. That's the truth. And unfortunately, Sarah Silverman is too much of a dipshit feminist to tell you the truth. Now, if you're lucky, what Sarah Silverman will do is she will, when you guys meet in real life, because of course her tweets are a bunch of fucking bullshit. Who knows what she really will tell you. But if she actually cares about you and wants you to get out of this bullshit malaise that you're stuck in over Louis C.K., what she will do is tell you the honest truth. She will tell you what I just told you here. You're not fucking funny and you're not pretty enough to get a TV show. So change something. Do something to actually get funny. Because, your looks are your looks. I don't know. Maybe you can get plastic surgery and become prettier. Who knows? But do something to actually become funny and you'll get that TV show. It's not Louis C.K. It's not the world. It's not sexual harassment. It's not predators out there because no one's preying on you. Predators don't ask for consent, Rebecca. Okay? So pull your shit together and get over it. And this goes for all those other female comedians who gave consent to Louis and are now boo-hooing over their ruined careers like he did something to them by wanking in front of them. Get over yourselves. All right, everybody. I think I have vented enough for one video. I will see you in the next upload.